beautiful Ethic cuties and the 40% of you who have still not subscribed to the Ethicsverse. What the heck's wrong with you? It's free. Welcome to the coolest place to be every Thursday at noon Eastern. If you think fixing our workplace can fix our world, I got a real treat for you today. Let's get a massive emoji explosion going. Let's get a massive round of applause for the one and only Gwen Hassan, the one and only Mel Sponholz. We're going to be going over this highly reviewed, some people said the best presentation they've ever seen from CEI, how the Enneagram can make you a better compliance professional. So we're going to be talking about the Enneagram. If you've never heard about it, buckle up. If you have, get ready to dive a little bit deeper. And we're going to talk about how learning our superpowers and recognizing the superpowers in those around us can help us drive a lot more impact. So as I run through these announcements, like I say every single week, your network is your net worth. Drop those LinkedIn URLs in the chat. Let us know at least where you're coming from. Let's get a bunch of emojis going. Nobody's had lunch. Nobody's had breakfast. We're hunting hungry today. So drop your LinkedIn URL in the chat and connect with one person. Just got back from the Opal conference, which was absolutely phenomenal. Opal always puts on great conferences, so we'll be giving some downloads about that. And we gave away some books, and of course, we're giving away books today. So if you're here for credits, or you're here for books, or you're here for the chat, or you're just here for a fun lunch, welcome. We're going to be giving away 5 copies of the FCPA Survival Guide. Of course, if you are one of the winners, you can pick from any of the books in the Ethical Library. And if you're interested in seeing what's in there, you can hit this QR code, or you can go ahead and just Google Ethico Library, and you're going to see a bunch of summaries of a bunch of phenomenal books. The FCPA Survival Guide is a book that Tom Fox wrote last year that we sponsored. We did a whole podcast series on it that won some awards, which was awesome. So check this book out if you dare. We're going to be talking Enneagram today. So if you have not taken the quiz yet, hit this QR code, or you can search, of course, Enneagram quiz Ethico, and you can take that quiz. It's pretty quick. It'll give you a couple of questions. Answer those questions. It'll tell you what your type is. Compliance Week's coming up. A round of applause for Compliance Week. I love Compliance Week every single year. It's such a great hack to drive more influence in the organization, get more people engaged in your program. And your good buddies at Ethico, your friendly neighborhood Ethico, put together a phenomenal corporate compliance and ethics week 2025 toolkit. So there's a bunch of great stuff in this toolkit. If you have not started thinking about it, now's the time to do it. If you haven't done anything for Compliance Week in the past, or you feel a little bit behind the 8 ball, I would just tell you to do something. Use it to your advantage to really kind of stack the deck in your favor, and check out yet another phenomenal toolkit. I'm not saying it just because our team made it. I'm saying it because it's actually great. Another phenomenal toolkit from Ethico to make your life a little bit easier. Speaking of making your life a little bit easier, our risk assessment tool is getting a lot of traction. We're getting a lot of phenomenal feedback. You can check out our G2 reviews if you've never done business with Ethico, or you feel like the love is lost and you've got that wandering eye a little bit right now. Check us out. Our new risk assessment tool lets you do a lot of stuff. So we can simplify distribution. You can get bite-sized risk assessments done for specific groups of people. You can do your entire annual, program, your entire annual risk assessment in it, but you can distribute that information in a really flexible way. You can build out whatever forms or whatever assessments you want, whether you're doing one global one for everybody, or you've taken some of the best practices from the Ethicsverse and you're building specific risk assessments for different positions, different departments, whatever. You can drag and drop and build those right in the tool. And the data is going to come back to you immediately, so you can, again, make better bets with your time. So our game is not one of, let's see what I can whittle off my to-do list. That to-do list is always going to be full. It's really focusing in and sniping off the items on that list that are really going to move the needle most, that are going to drive most impact, that are going to reduce the most risk, that are going to really build that culture of integrity that leads to all those positive externalities that we're all shooting for. Everybody on this call today believes that the integrity that we exhibit in our workplaces actually matters. The roles that you do actually matter. They're difficult roles. You many times feel like you have the weight of the world on your shoulders, but this is our time to check in with each other every single week to give us that shot in the arm. And a tool like this that can give you better information in real time will allow you to allocate those scarce resources that you have in the best way possible. So we have a risk intelligence at scale package that we've put together. This is really just a bundling of a number of modules in order to drive at the solution that you're looking for. All right, with all of that, let's get one more massive welcome, one more massive Ethicsverse welcome to the one and only Gwen and the one and only Mel. How's it going, guys?
Good, glad to be here.
Hey, thanks for including us. Fun to be here.
So Gwen and Mel are kind of Enneagram experts. We've all, the three of us, we've really loved the learning about the Enneagram, and I'll speak for myself. It's really changed my life in a lot of ways. And so what we did is we pulled together a bunch of information about how learning about the Enneagram can make you a better compliance professional. So I'm going to run through, if you don't know Mel and you don't know Gwen, you should definitely follow them on LinkedIn. Mel runs compliance for Beata, and Gwen is the chief compliance officer at Unisys. Glenn, of course, has that very famous podcast that some of you guys may have checked out. Mel has had so much impact. She's been, both these guys have been on the Ethicsverse, of course, before. Really glad to have you guys here. I'm Nick. You see me here every week, okay? So what you'll notice, though, on the bottom of each of these intros, you see a 3W2. So you're getting three wing twos here. This is unheard of, unprecedented, 0.1% chance that something this rare would happen. So we are going to be running through a number of different things today. We're going to talk about unlocking your compass for compliance excellence. So we're going to give you a little bit of an introduction. We're going to give you some overview of the Enneagram, how this can turn into your personal operating system. Then we're going to walk through each of these 9 types. Every single one of us really, we end up sort of being one of these 9 types. So as we're going through these, some of these are going to really be like, oh, I'm kind of like that. Oh, I'm kind of like that. And then you're going to get to one that's going to feel very revealing. That's your type. And so when you can start to understand your type and put that into practice in a collaborative way, really lean into your strengths and recognize those strengths in others, you can really transform all aspects of your life, because like I always say, life is relationships. Then we're going to dive into, this is really the meat and potatoes of the conversation here. We're really going to be diving into some Enneagram informed strategies for compliance professionals, how you can put this information to work. And then, of course, we're going to do a conclusion. So with that, let's dive right in to the Enneagram. If you guys have done the Enneagram before and you know it, drop your type in the chat. And of course, as always, keep those questions coming. We want to make this organic. And also, we're going to be running a little bit long today. So if you missed the last 15, 20, 30 minutes of the presentation, that will be up on our YouTube channel and up on the console later today. Okay, so introduction. I'm going to pass this over to Gwen. How's it going, Gwen?
It's going great, Nick. Thanks. So let's advance all the content there. Yeah. So this is the kind of context for the Enneagram. We spend a lot of time, of course, focused on rules, right? What are the external rules? What are the things we have to comply with? What are the regulations we're tracking? But our goal is, of course, to build culture and to build kind of continuity of integrity throughout our organizations. And that's driven primarily by us as humans and by our human factors. What we're like, what are our strengths, what are our weaknesses, what are the things we're afraid of, what are the things that really light us up inside. And that is the basis for this whole concept of how an Enneagram understanding can make you a better compliance professional. Knowing the rules isn't enough. You also have to know yourself and the people that you're partnering with. So here's kind of the idea behind this system. It's a 9 personality style system. So for those of you who have done maybe Myers-Briggs in the past, or it's similar, but this one has more connection to core motivations, fears, and desires. It also helps you understand kind of where you are and where you move to under stress, and where you might be leaning into when you're feeling very positive and very confident. So it provides you with all different ideas around where your own strengths are and where you might have some blind spots that you need to look at. That can also then translate into looking at this for your team.
All right, so let's kind of dive into the understanding the Enneagram at a little bit of a deeper level. Mel, you love this picture on the right. Walk us through how this is a little bit more than just a test.
Okay, so Gwen gave a little bit of an introduction about there being 9 types, and it's kind of based on core motivations and fears. And it says that here on this slide about how this is kind of childhood stuff, like how were you wired? What were your fears? What were your desires? What were your weaknesses? What are you really looking for in life? one of the things I really want to highlight is that at the end of the day, only you can type yourself for these reasons, because it's about your key fears, key motivations. And so, I might have some of the same goals in life or behaviors as someone else, but the motivations and the fears that are going on behind the scenes may be different. And so you can't just look at someone's goals or outer behaviors all the time and know for sure what type they are. So I want to caution about that, because I think it's super helpful, and a lot of times you'll have a really good idea. Like this cartoon cracks me up because it kind of is, when you boil it down to the kind of the stereotypes of the different numbers. Like I'm a 3, like we were the class president, we're the go-getters, the achievers. And you look at a 7 and, they may be stereotypically the everything's great, rah, rah, let's go cheerleaders of the world. But you still have to realize at the end of the day, you only know what's going on inside your own brain. But I do want to highlight also that, as valuable as this system will be for interacting with other people and understanding, which is important, that there are people who really think differently than we do, which sounds so basic, but sometimes I think we forget that. But it's also super valuable for helping you understand yourself. And I think that's been one of the most valuable aspects of the Enneagram for me is when I figured out what type I was. And no matter what type you are, if you dig in and read the descriptions, there'll be things about it that are great, and there'll be things about it that aren't great that you're like, wow, I really wish that wasn't true about me, but it kind of is. So I think it's a really great way to get to know yourself better, which the world would be a much better place if we all had a little more self-awareness. So I think those are some of the great things I wanted to point out. Like, yes, stereotypes, yes, great to try to figure out what's going on in the world, but at the end of the day, use it to know yourself, because that's if you can know yourself, you're ahead of the game to begin with.
It's really true. I mean, we do so many things. Well, I'll speak for myself. We do so many things that I don't know why I do them. You know what I mean? Just kind of do things. Okay. Getting that kind of awareness really does a lot to open my eyes, at least, and start to kind of see those things in other folks. Okay. So walk us through the Enneagram symbol, Mel.
So there's a lot of arrows going on here. There are the 9 core archetypes that are in the system, and you can do, like I said before, you can only really type yourself. So what I suggest is do a bunch of the free online quizzes. There's a bunch of them out there. See if there's a couple of types that predominate in your results, and then really dig in and read the descriptions to help you figure out which of the types that you are. And then you'll see people talk, and we'll talk about it a little bit, I think, later, about you could look at it as having a type with wings. So I'm a 3. You can have a 3 with 4 wing or a 3 with a 2 wing. If you look at the little symbol, those are the ones next to me there. And that kind of just means, which I think is important overall, is that nobody is purely one type. And in all honesty, we all have some of every type, somewhere inside us. You just lean really heavily into one. So you have these wings. You also, the arrows that point away from and toward each number show where you might go in times of stress. So like a 3, for instance, during times of stress, you'll see the arrow pointing away that goes to the 9. That's the disintegration line. And in that case, a 3 is usually a super confident achiever type. But when we disintegrate, we might go towards a 9, which as a 3, that would look like 9s are more a type, which we'll talk more about later, but that really take everyone's point of view into an account before making a decision and are much more deliberate. Whereas a 3, we're let's just get to the bottom line, get moving because we got to cross the finish line. So when we are under a lot of stress, you may see a 3 that kind of backs off and is indecisive or is not moving towards action all the time. So that may be a sign that a 3 is under stress when they're behaving more like a 9 and slowing down and hitting the brakes more. Whereas conversely, when we're integrating, when we're really doing well, we might, you'll see that there's a line that goes towards the 3 from 6. Okay, so 6s are the personality types in life that if you need to figure out like what could go wrong somewhere, ask a 6, because they're always skeptical, they're always doubting, they're always looking for what could go wrong. And having a little bit of ability for a 3, because we're the go-getters, let's just get it done. We're not going to think too hard about what could go wrong because everything's going to go right because we're going to get it done. If we can take a little bit of that, ability to be vulnerable and think about, some of the ways that, we may be able to be a little less over decisive, that can be really healthy for us and maybe even give us a little injection of humanity because we back off our, super achiever, confident self for a moment and can take in, some other possibilities. So every type has, those to and from arrows. And if you go and dig into your description, you can kind of see how that works.
So what's different about this personality framework than some of the others is it's really all about core motivation. So when you start to learn about the Enneagram and you start to consider this framework, you'll see that it really helps to uncover what makes you think, behave, and act the way you do by examining each individual's, whether it's yourself or your spouse or other people on your team, really getting an understanding for these core fears, desires, weaknesses, and longings. And each type can strategically start to employ those inherent skills, right? Like we're all wired a certain way. So much of our success in life is the extent to which we can identify and then lean into the strengths that we have that are really unique to us that maybe other people don't, have the same sort of penchant for or the same kind of inclination. And it really helps us, because each person strategically tries to compensate for, whatever fears or weaknesses that they have. You can really kind of start to not only empathize a little bit better, but really be more effective, whether it's with your children, like I said, your spouse, people on your team, or even with yourself. I've just found that as I've started to tune into these things and start to consider that everybody is not like me, I kind of suffer from everybody is like me disease. When I start to recognize that, okay, other people are not like me, and there are things that people consider as their highest priority that aren't even on my priority list, I can kind of come with a little bit more empathy and hopefully a little bit more effectiveness. Gwen, why don't you share this quote? Because this is one of your most famous quotes that the room went nuts at CEI about this quote.
People can read it, but it's the Enneagram provides a practical roadmap for personal development, but also managing professional pressures. We're all under a lot of pressures as compliance officers. And that can lead us to kind of this default mode that we get into when we're under stress. So as Mel was talking about, the arrow away from you is where you often default to when you're under stress. And understanding that about yourself and how your behavior shifts can really be a great way to not only further your own development, but to make sure that you then are showing up the way you want to in your teams and the way you want to with your management and your board and your leadership. So Mel talked about the 3 example. Here's one on this slide about a 4. 4s may show up kind of as an unhealthy 2 in stress. And 2s are known for being people who are the ultimate helpers, but can also, on the negative side, be sort of codependent, can be people pleasers, can be very possessive. And so if you are a 4 and you're under stress, you can watch out for that with yourself and realize when I'm stressed out, I often become kind of people pleasing. I need to be aware of that. I need to watch for that. So it shows how to grow, and it can really be a great map also for how you can look to be the better version of yourself. Again, with the 4 example, 4s often kind of move towards or want to pull from a 1. And the 1 has a very grounded sense, has a very balanced kind of a healthy positioning with relationships. And so if you know this about yourself, you can, when you're under stress, look for the 1 attributes in yourself and try to highlight them and emphasize them and focus on them. So it's a great way to learn how to deal with stress and how to further your relationships.
It really is. And, again, I'm a 3, so sometimes I can see when I'm like, if I'm isolating and exhibiting some of those unhealthy, 9 traits, That can be kind of a wake up call to say like, okay, I have to kind of tackle this challenge that's in front of me that I'm really kind of stirring the paint too much on. All right, Mel, so walk us through wings, because you're the queen of these wings.
Yeah, I don't know. Like, I think, the wings make sense. We're going to talk in a second about the triads, which, there, and the subtypes, but, there are kind of groupings of different, like 2, 3, 4, because I'm a 3. So I know a lot about that triad is the heart triad, right? So those are people who kind of go through life making decisions and deciding what's true, and being driven by their emotional sense of what's going on in life. And so I think it's only natural to think then, so those are the triads. So you've got that 2, 3, 4, the feeling, the heart triad. So the wings make sense, right? Because if you're in that triad, those are, if I'm a 3, the 2s and the 4s are the other folks that are also heart driven, right? So I probably have some things in common with them. And as Gwen was talking a little bit before about the 2s are the helpers, but they under stress can be a little bit, sometimes they're pleasers, or sometimes they find themselves like, I helped everyone so much, and now it's time to call the chips in, and they can get a little bit possessive about wanting you to return the favor, kinds of things. So there's different flavors to each type. The 4s, the individualists, are really all about being, unique and original, and they that's their key drive in life, is to be unique. So as a 3, I certainly have, all of those traits a little bit in my personality. But I am a 3 wing too. And I don't think we said it at the beginning, but interestingly, all 3 of your presenters today are 3s with a 2 wing. So, just take that into it with a grain of salt while we're talking through this whole thing, because we all kind of have a similar life view, which is really interesting. But so when you look at your type, you may find that, if you're an 8, there are certain things about a 9 personality that really resonate with you. So that's basically the wing structure. It's just realizing that we all have a little bit of the other 2 types in our triad that are in our personality, and kind of understanding how that may color your core personality.
And, speaking of these triads, I think these are pretty interesting because there are these 3 sort of centers of intelligence. So you have a gut or body center. That's where the 8s, 9s, and 1s, this is right up top. That's where they live. And they tend to express, they tend to be very action oriented, and they tend to go off their instincts and be sort of driven by an anger, right? Like you see a 1 often be kind of, exhibiting that righteous indignation, and an 8 just, kind of being that sort of mama bear that will, fight anyone to protect those that they love. So a heart and feeling center, as Mel was saying, that's the 2, 3, and 4. And heart and feeling center, they're very sort of driven by image. They're driven by sort of external factors. And these are the heart types. So they're really driven by their feelings and image concerns, and they're very perception attuned. So, some people are really good at like reading the air, as the Japanese say, like reading a room. 2s, 3s, and 4s are really good at reading the room. There are other types that are probably not in this triad that maybe struggle with those kind of those external kind of those perception attuned qualities. And then finally, you have the head types. So the head types are thinking, and they're very fear-based, okay? So they're really security-driven. They prioritize trying to solve for security and knowing kind of what's along that curve. So again, if somebody seems like angry all the time, mad all the time, and you're very sort of image conscious, just recognize that that's a corollary for them. That is the equivalent thing to you is their anger or their security-mindedness. Let's talk a little bit now about the self-diagnosis and how to uncover your type, Gwen.
So there are a bunch. I saw a couple of people commenting in the comments. Where do I take a test? Did I miss a test? There are a number of places online where you can take a extended test. Be aware that those tests, though, can be misleading. The best way to figure out what type you are, in my view, is to listen to this presentation. That's very self-serving. But then think about what resonates with you. What, as you're listening to it, do you think, oh, maybe that's me? That sounds a little bit like me. But there will be one where you think, oh, yeah, that makes me a little uncomfortable because I recognize that in me. The term we used here was embarrassed recognition. When you see something of yourself in one of these descriptions, that is more likely to be your type than any other. So I suggest doing a number of things. Do an online test, listen to this presentation, read a book about the Enneagram, and figure out what you feel at your core is something you are looking to fulfill in your life. The key question, when fulfilling your needs, do you move towards or away from people? Do you move against them or do you move towards them? That's a key question that helps you identify which type you are. Reflect on the motivations that you have. What is your deepest fear? What is your truest desire? What are your core weaknesses? I love this term, your deepest longing, because that will help you figure out what type you are. And then there's nuances in each of the different subtypes that will help you kind of figure out if you're wavering between, I don't know if I'm a 3 or if I'm a 2. As you listen to some of these descriptions and read some more about it, you can start to figure out, oh, no, I definitely lean into my 3 more than my 2. And as Melanie was talking about, there's always the wing concept, right? Which is if you feel predominantly one, but you lean off into another, that might be one where you have a wing. So I, like Mel and Nick, am a 3 with a 2 wing. And I struggled for a while to figure out if I was a 2 or a 3. But with more reading and more listening, I am solidly a 3. So that's how you can uncover and figure out your own.
Yeah, I mean, it is crazy. Sometimes a test will give you a different answer, but then I've just found as I'm reading a paragraph about a type, it's like these shots to the heart. It's like you said, it's almost embarrassing to be sort of laid bare on the page. That's your type. And like Mel was saying, that's really the best way to identify your type. So you have your main type, you're one of these 9 types, you lean to a type next to you, that's your wing. And then we have these subtypes. And so while we are all 3 wing 2s on this episode, all of us presenters are 3 wing 2s, we all have different subtypes. So the main 3 there's 3 subtypes. There's a self-preservation subtype, there's a social subtype, and there's an intimate or sexual subtype. Get your minds out of the gutter. Let's each one of us, though, are different subtypes. So let's talk about the self-preservation one and what is kind of unique to you, Mel. Mel, you're self-preservation, yes?
Yeah. Yep. I'm self-preservation. And I just want to also throw out as we go through these types, when I first started learning about the Enneagram, it was one of my meditation instructors who first introduced me to it. And she uses this example of your behavior when you're planning to go to a conference to help you figure out which of these subtypes you are. So I'm going to throw that example out there. She talked about if you are planning to go to, let's call it the HGCA in this case, and you're a self-preservation like me, you're going to think about things like, was I able to get a reservation in the hotel where the conference center is? Because, how much walking am I going to have to do to get to sessions? Do I need to have comfortable shoes because I'm going to be staying 3 blocks away? Is it a town where I know my way around and I'm going to be comfortable? Do I know what kind of food there is going to be in this location? Is it going to be stuff that I like? Do I know that I'll have the right clothes packed for the climate and it is going to be cold in the conference center? It's like very much about my safety and my well-being. And, do I feel like I'm going to have all the stuff I need in my suitcase to be comfortable and be well prepared for what's going on here? And that's my approach to the conference. And I won't go too much into the other 2 because we're going to let our other types talk about their subtypes. But the social person would be more focused on who's the group of people I'm going to this conference with. Is this a group that I like to identify with, that I'm going to have fun with, that I'm going to want to participate with? And the intimate type is going to think more about like, is there going to be that one person at this conference who like totally gets me and we could sit in a session together and we won't even have to say anything. When that speaker, hits on a certain point, we can just make eye contact and we'll be like, we know we're thinking the same thing about that. And then at the end of the day, we'll be able to sit down at cocktail hour and just like debrief and dig into our experience together because, we've got that connection. It's a very like one-on-one connection oriented thing. So like I knew I was a self-preservation type when I first started hearing about it. I don't know if anyone here is as old as I am and read the Little House on the Prairie books when you were growing up. But there's this scene in Little House in the Big Woods where Laura Ingalls is describing how they harvest in the fall and how they put up all this food to like be there for them through the winter months. And they're, preserving things and hanging strings of garlic and whatever. And I still remember vividly the scene from that book because it was really satisfying to me to think about laying in stores. And I'm that person that always has like, if I use certain kind of skincare, you can bet I have a backup jar of like that cream in my cabinet, or like my pantry is always full. Like I am that. So that's what gives me comfort in life and security. That feels really satisfying to me, is to just know that all my needs are backed up and met.
For social, I have no backups for any of my skincare. Okay, I'm riding the bullet every day. I'm really, as a social, social subtypes tend to be very focused on group belonging. How are people feeling? What is like the acceptance level? And really kind of tuned into social dynamics. So another kind of key is like, where are struggles visible? So for self-preservation types, they're oftentimes not visible. They're kind of below the surface. They're kind of, packed into that sort of that mason jar that you're doing all your preserves in. Interpersonal dramas for social types are very evident in group settings. They can tune into those very, very quickly. And then let's, Gwen, round us out here with the intimate one.
My kind of immediate search for connection is not in trying to fit in with a larger group. It's to develop a one-on-one connection with someone. I am very attuned to being understood and to the idea of having passion. And yes, mind's out of the gutter, not just sexual passion, but passion for life and things about that I care deeply about. Thus, as Nick mentioned, the podcast I have done on human trafficking, because I'm passionate about that topic. So my real focus is on individual relationship building, and dramas unfold, as it says here, in individual relationships. You won't see kind of a group setting conflict very often, and you won't, my struggle won't be invisible to you, but it'll be apparent if we are in a one-on-one individual relationship, which is where I feel safest. That's my default.
So just to use this example that Mel talked about, if you're a self-preservation type, you're probably well prepared for that trip. Your bag is probably packed the night, a couple nights before, and you're spending a lot of time thinking about, am I going to be sort of safe, quote unquote, secure at the event? A social is going to be more like, who all is going to be there? And an intimate or sexual one is going to be all about, is my person going to be there? Those are the first types of things that these different subtypes are kind of thinking about. So the test that we shared, the link does not get into subtypes. There's multiple different layers of the Enneagram. You can really spend really many hours kind of rabbit holing on this and learning more about it. We're trying to give you a kind of a snapshot, a high level overview of it, so you can start to self-diagnose and start to look for some of these tendencies in yourself. Michelle just brought up an interesting point that I love before we kind of get into the 9 types that I'd love to get your perspective on, Gwen and Mel. She said, I've also seen that these types of tools can create bias on teams because one doesn't think another is able to do X, Y, or Z because of their type. People are dynamic. So have you encountered that either with your own, viewing yourself to say, oh, I'm just this kind of type, I guess I just interrupt people. This is a little bit of a therapy session for me today, so you might learn a little something. Have you noticed some of that where some of these descriptions end up becoming sort of like limiting beliefs that we might have about ourselves or others?
Yeah, I think that's why when we were talking about typing, that I cautioned not to stereotype or not to discriminate against people because you think they're a certain type. It's more, I think, useful in that it helps you realize that they're, like, for instance, I did a meditation retreat where we also talked about the Enneagram, and we had this really eye-opening session where different types talked about what they wish other people knew about being their type. And it was so eye-opening because when you go, like Nick, you said, like, we all have that bias to go through life kind of with this faulty assumption that other people are wired the same way we are. And then to hear other folks talking about what it's like to really approach different situations as a different type it gave me a lot of empathy, really. And then that's what I'm hoping this tool can do, is give you some empathy for people who are approaching things differently than you are. So hopefully if the tool is used for good, then it's going to give you empathy and help you pause and maybe modify your approach when you need to work well with someone who's different from yourself, instead of using it to kind of stereotype and put people in a box because of their type.
Yeah, I think that's well put. What would you add to that, Gwen?
I would add just the last couple slides that we've talked about it, emphasize that even if you are a 3, there's many different subtypes. You can have different wings. You can have different, whether you're social or self-preservation. So you can't make assumptions about what every 2 is like or what every 9 is like or whatever, because everyone has different nuances within their types. And this should be used, in my view, internally for a self-assessment far more than it is used to, put other people in buckets. It's to identify where your weaknesses and blind spots are so you can better show up for other people.
Yeah, and I think, kind of the other side of that is you can sometimes recognize, and it could spark a conversation, you can recognize an inclination somebody on your team might have for something that you might hate and you might think everybody hates. And that can spark a conversation to give some of that work to somebody that actually, that work might feed them. Like maybe that's research, or maybe it's ticking and tying out, a report with a bunch of data points. Some people are really good at that and they have an inclination for it. So I agree. How about that? Okay, let's dive into the 9 types. You guys are going to love this part, and stay tuned for this. You got to really tune in here because we're going to have a little quiz at the end that you're absolutely going to love. All right, so type 1, Mel, why don't you walk us through a lot of 1s here? So watch what you say. There's a lot of 1s in the chat today, so you got to be very careful. But walk us through. I have
a lot of very good 1 friends. A lot of very good 1 friends.
So you should be fine here.
So I'm cool with 1s. Yeah. So 1s, their core desire is to be good or right, to have integrity, and their core fear is being wrong, being seen as bad, being seen as evil. So you can see why a lot of people that might be attracted to compliance that have a personality type like a 1, because integrity is super important to them. So they can lead towards perfectionism because their motivation is really to just get everything exactly right, to be consistent and ethical and correct beyond reproach. So they can lean towards a little bit of perfectionism sometimes, and they can be very black and white because they're very right and wrong. And so what might be a core weakness there? They can get all of the thinking triad, the 8, 9, 1s. They all have a connection to anger, and 1s tend to get ticked off when things are not being done the right way. Like, this is the person that's going to make you reload the dishwasher. I'm just saying, like, there's a right way, there's a wrong way. They may just do it for you because it's easier than trying to get you to do it perfectly, which they know that they can. So that could be a core weakness. And their speaking style is a sermon. It's preaching. It's telling you the way things should be, and so you can sometimes tell if you feel like someone's preaching to you about what's going on. That's a 1. That's a give away.
So speaking of the right way to load the dishwasher, I'd love for the chat to weigh in on this. Is it forks up or down? Okay, let's get that answer in the baskets. Forks up or down? All right. Walk us through now, Mel, kind of some of the precision and pitfalls that a 1 in compliance might make. What are some of the strengths that they have?
Okay, so I mentioned quickly, but they are very ethical. They are very attuned to knowing the way things are supposed to be done, knowing the rules, knowing the regulations, great attention to detail. So that can be super effective. On the flip side, the black and white thing can be a challenge because, I think most of us that work in compliance know that, sometimes you need to be able to walk in the gray, right? And, like I always talk about compliance as being like a bell curve where you've got jail at one end and completely risk-free, but completely business unfriendly at the other end. And so really having the nuance to be able to help people understand the risk and the nuance of what's in between is like a really great skill for us. And ones may struggle with that. And they may be prone to burnout because it's very stressful to feel like it's your responsibility as a person to keep everyone on the right track all the time and to really feel that strongly about it. So they have to be careful about resentment towards people who are not at the same point on the perfectionism scale and burnout challenges, black and white challenges. But great champions for ethics and really great at attention to detail and helping us all understand the right path. So it's every coin has two sides for sure.
Ones love righteous indignation. That is like their thing, Shouldn't be that way. They say should a lot or shouldn't. Okay. Talk to us about the helper. Gwen.
The helper. So the helper is someone who focuses so much on being liked, being loved, being wanted, being appreciated. The World's Best Boss Cup on here exactly encapsulates a standard 2. Their greatest fear is being rejected or being unloved, being unliked. They are generally very demonstrative and generous, but they can tend towards being people-pleasing. They want to be needed and to be validated a lot. They enjoy being validated quite a bit. Their core weakness is pride. There is, in being a people pleaser, and I speak from some experience here, my mother was a 2, there is an element of, I know what's best for you. And so I will help you because you aren't capable of knowing this or of doing this. I can do it better for you. And so there's kind of this core belief that they alone know what's best. And that can be dangerous. The communication style is going to be an apology, almost always. I love this quote. I'd love to help, but I'm already busy helping somebody else. But maybe if I move something, it's very accommodating, I'm so sorry. It's very sympathetic all the time. You'll get a lot of, I feel badly for taking up space. Please like me in your communications with 2s.
2s just want to be loved, kind of a Sally Field
just want to be loved.
Yeah.
That's what they want. So core strengths, very empathetic, very approachable people, but they can really struggle at delivering bad news because they fear being unliked or having someone take the bad news as being reflective of them or their capabilities. They are prone to self-sacrifice to a level that may be unhealthy. Right. They are sometimes prone to what I would call self-abandonment. So they not only do for others, but they do for others to an extent that leads to their own burnout and their resentment and their anger. They have a high need for appreciation and for validation. So one of the things that is important in terms of growth for a 2 in ethics and compliance is to make sure that they're differentiating genuine helpfulness from people pleasing. Because if you're going to people please because you're afraid that someone's not going to like you, it may run into situations where you're willing to compromise on ethics or integrity to gain personal approval. And so for a 2, the ability to prioritize integrity over validation is the real growth area.
All right, let's talk about threes, the achiever. You got 3 achievers here. A lot of oldest children are 3s. Okay, take my word for it. The one and only Elle Woods is a perfect example of a 3. And the achiever's main goal is to be successful and admired. And what really drives a 3, the fuel, the thing that they're, the road that they're trying to not go off into the ditch of, is that feeling of being worthless. So 3s are always trying to not be worthless. They're trying to show that they're not worthless. But please believe me, I'm not worthless. Okay. The characteristics are adaptive. They're excelling. That's what that's a currency for a 3. They want to be excellent. They're very driven and they're very image conscious. Hello. And they desire affirmation. So a lot of 3s will have, if you look at the 5 love languages, they'll have words of affirmation as one of their top 2 usually, okay? And they want to impress and distinguish themselves from other folks. So their core weakness, this is not me though, of course, their core weakness is deceit, so hiding the true self and emotional struggles. In order to maintain an image of success. So the communication style for a 3 is like they always think in messaging. They're always so outwardly focused. Again, think of that high sort of social perception, that sort of attunement to social norms. 3s are kind of well inclined in that. And they're always thinking messaging. They're always thinking persuasion. They're thinking influence in that kind of a sales pitch. And so I love this quote from a 3. I don't quit, suffer now, and live the rest of your life as a champion. Boy, I need that on a mug. We need to get a sticker for that. Okay, so 3 in compliance, the things to really think about are drive and authenticity. So again, 3s are very goal-oriented. They're very charismatic. They can be charismatic advocates, right? They can sell and they can, drive influence throughout the organization. They're sometimes really good at project management, but they struggle with sort of the external over the actual, the external over sort of what's real. And another big struggle for a 3, as Mel kind of alluded to, because they're so forward driven, because they just want to get to that bottom line. She kind of said, well, blah, blah, blah. What's the bottom line? They can come across as very impatient because they are impatient. And they're a little bit more risk tolerant than some of the other types naturally, like a 6 who's very security minded, or a 1 who's very, ethics minded, like that's their main driver, okay? So the insights here are that while success and admiration can lead to appearing compliant, we have to actually be compliant. We have to actually be ethical, and trust that the output from whatever system we're managing should take care of itself, regardless of whether it looks good. So embracing vulnerability for a 3 is a big one. Showing failures as opportunities to improve, not something that needs to be hidden, is another big action tip. And trying to really align or define success as alignment with ethical principles can be a way to reframe, a dynamic that's in play to really, for a 3, to really put their unique fuel to work in pursuit of that goal. All right, Mel, over to you for the individualist.
Okay, I am actually married to a 4, so have some insight into this one. A lot of creative types are 4s because their core desire is to be unique and authentic. They may be the types that are like, no one understands me, because they believe that they are, so unique that one of their struggles in life is feeling like no one really gets them because of their uniqueness. And
every 4 thinks they're the only 4. Okay.
Yes, exactly, exactly. And they really fear being ordinary. So they don't want people to think that they're basic or insignificant. They want to be seen as this unique and special unicorn of a creature that they are. So their motivation is to really express that individuality and to protect that very deep feeling folks. One thing to bring up about the Enneagram too, another nuance, is that every triad kind of has so if we look at the heart triad, which a 4 is part of the heart triad along with the 2s and the 3s, you have one type, in this case the 4, who really internalizes that energy. So that emotional energy, they feel the things that are going on in the world around them as if almost like it's going on within themselves. They internalize all that emotional energy. The 2s externalize all that emotional energy because they're always trying to make sure everyone around them feels the way they need to feel. They're the helpers of the world. And the 3s, meanwhile, the other number in the triad kind of is cut off from the energy to some extent. And with the 3s, that's because we tend to be the compartmentalizers, where we're like, we take that emotional reaction and we put it in a box and lock it up because it gets in the way of us accomplishing things and getting things done and getting them done for, really quickly. So the 4s are the internalizers. So they can be very emotional, and their communication style may be a lament. They may be they have a little bit of the, I just am never going to have that thing that I deeply long for in life. And when it says the weakness is envy, it's not like they envy you because they want what you have. They envy that they feel like other people can be satisfied in life, whereas they're always longing and wanting for that unique achievement of their creative goals that they can't seem to get within their grasp. So it's really an envy of other people who can just be happy and satisfied when they're pining away for their the thing that they
So if you think about the heart triad, it's like the 2 feels everything you feel and they know what to do about it. The 4 feels everything that they feel and they know what to do about it. The 3 feels everything everybody feels and they don't know what to do about it because they just put it inside of a box. All right, let's talk about insight and resilience here for a type 4 now.
Yeah, so the 4s, they are, one thing I really admire about my husband is his authenticity. When you talk about people pleasers, like he's the opposite of a people pleaser. Not that he doesn't, like he cares deeply that other people are happy, but he is completely authentic to himself. And so if however he views something, isn't going with the flow, he has no problem with expressing that because he's always authentic to himself. He's got none of those, I need to adapt my opinion to match others' vibe. He has none of that. So that could be really great in compliance because they're going to stay true to their beliefs. They're not going to, they don't feel the need to be swayed to the crowd. They can be overwhelmed. Like I said, they feel everything that's going on in the world as if it were going on inside themselves. So if there's a lot of bad stuff going on, they might be able to get overwhelmed. Also, because they're such creative types, they need outlets for that creativity. And so if you put them in a role where they're kind of, living Groundhog Day, doing the same thing over and over again, they're going to burn out. They're not going to be happy in that role because they find extreme routine challenging. They need variety and creativity. They can be really valuable in providing that emotional sensitivity and authenticity to whatever it is that you're working on. They're really good at balancing. Like I think my husband and I are great yin and yang because I have that kind of like barrel forward, we'll feel about it later thing going on, and he's got the like, wait a minute, like, let's like, there's this emotional aspect of this thing that's going on. And so it's great. They're great balance when you have 8s or 3s. Like 8s also tend to be very like hard driving, move ahead type folks. So it's good to have some 4 energy in the mix. And you just need to know if you're a 4 that you kind of need to manage that emotional intensity that you have. Make sure that you take care of yourself and you don't burn out because you're constantly feeling all the feelings that are flowing around in your environment, and make sure that you channel that authenticity in a way that can be action oriented. So that's some insight about the 4 in compliance.
Great. All right, let's hear about the investigator.
Yeah, real quick. One of the reasons I knew that I was a 3 was because of Scarlett O'Hara. Because Scarlett O'Hara's one of her famous quotes is, "I can't think about that now. I'll think about that tomorrow." When something upsetting happens, and that ties in. So
we'll think about that another day.
I'll think about that another day, and that so clearly ties into that compartmentalization of a 3. So okay, 5s. My father was a 5, and the core desire of a 5 is to gather knowledge. They are a collector of knowledge. They want to know everything about everything. They want to be knowledgeable and to be seen as being competent. Their core fear is to be seen as ignorant or to have excessive emotional demands placed on them. So imagine that you have a very dramatic and emotional child, and you are a 5 parent, and your dramatic emotional child has just broken up with their first teenage boyfriend or girlfriend and is lamenting and is sobbing, and just your 5 parent is going to be completely annoyed by, if not repulsed by, all of that emotional display and the demand that you talk to them about it or be there for them. So the 5 really is someone somewhat isolated, somewhat secretive, but they can be very innovative. They often are extremely perceptive about what's going on with other people. Their motivation, though, is to understand the environment at a level that no one else is probably interested in understanding. And the reason is to protect themselves from threats. To them, knowledge equals power and protection. Their core weakness is avarice, hoarding their internal resources, their energy, their time, because they're afraid it's going to be used up and leave them vulnerable. Their communication style, whenever you talk to a 5, you're going to get a lecture. You're going to get a long treatise on something that you never knew you wanted to know anything about. And the quote here is, overanalyzing is just my way of showing you that I care, which is completely my father, 100%. So in compliance, these people are the kind of people, if you need someone to research a new regulation, to research or come up with benchmarking data, you need someone to do a complex investigation, 5s are your people. They are great at analysis and complex data gathering and deep research, conducting of a risk assessment. Oh, absolutely, all day long. Your 5s are going to excel at that. They're going to be better at it than most other numbers will be. But their challenges are they can become emotionally detached and be seen as too isolated or too much of a loner. They may struggle with communicating complex findings. They find emotional demands and conflict really difficult. Any open displays of emotion, positive or negative, can make them feel very vulnerable and unsafe. So their drive for knowledge can lead to, as I said here, an unparalleled analytical depth. It's great, but it can lead sometimes to that detachment from practical implementation. They can get stuck in their heads, that idea of paralysis by analysis, which we've heard before, where you're so stuck in analyzing things that you then can't move forward into action. So if you have a 5 on your team and you also have a 3, that's a great combination to pair up, because the 5 will do all of the research needed to take a careful look and will help to temper the let's get it done of the 3. And conversely, the let's get it done of the 3 can help pull the 5 towards action instead of getting stuck in analysis. It's the pairing together works really well. So that expertise is most valuable when it's actually shared and when it's applied in action.
Yeah, what I end up saying to 5s a lot as a 3 is we got to stop stirring and start painting. Okay, we got to stop stirring the paint. We got to start putting some of that paint on the walls. They will make sure the paint is stirred, though, perfectly. Let's talk about 6s. So 6 is the loyalist. There's a lot of 6s in the chat as well. A lot of 6s find their way in ethics and compliance. And Liz Lemon, the one and only Liz Lemon, is your quintessential loyalist. I kind of think of her as the mascot for ethics and compliance. So they're really driven by, they have a desire for security and guidance in their life. And their core fear is experiencing fear itself, or being without support, or being without a plan. So these types are very responsible, high conscientious types. Most of 6s, if you look at the Myers-Briggs, I think I put this in the chat. If you look at the Myers-Briggs, I would say probably most 6s, your 4 letters probably ends in a J. So these are engaging, anxious. They're very suspicious. They're not going to take your word from it or your word on it. They're going to want to verify everything. They're kind of all from Missouri. They're all like show me type folks. Okay. So they're looking for security, support, and certainty. And, a 6 is often going to be better than other types at, like I like to say, seeing around the curve, anticipating how something might go wrong. They're most likely to ask some questions about whatever plan is in place to really kind of push on the walls of that plan to see how sturdy that plan is. So the core weakness for a 6 is anxiety. And they're consistently, again, kind of really adept at thinking about those worst case scenarios. So they're always going to say something like, expect the worst, but I'm always hoping for the best. So their communication style is a warning. So if you're hearing a lot of warnings from somebody, they might be a 6. If you're hearing a lot of sales pitches from somebody, they might be a 3. If you're hearing a lot of lectures from somebody, they might be a 5. So when you can kind of tune into these communication styles, you can really kind of start to diagnose what types somebody is, and utilize them to a greater degree, give them the better support that they need. So again, 6s are highly responsible, they're very diligent, and their natural skepticism is a great asset, specifically in complexity. But they struggle with some of that worst case scenario thinking, and they can sometimes project their fears onto other people, especially if they're in a leadership position. So this worst case scenario thinking is a natural fit for risk management roles in general, or for management roles in general, but it can lead to sometimes analysis paralysis, where you're planning to do a plan about a plan, okay? And which can stifle some innovation and stifle some of that forward movement that's necessary for growth or building to actually happen. So when 6s can really balance that vigilance with trust, with the trust that they've accumulated, in their own judgment. 6s are really good at kind of sniffing out BS, and so when they can balance that vigilance with the trust, or with their faith in their own, judgment, and they can channel that anxiety that they're naturally going to feel, probably at a little bit of a higher rate than others, into actually, driving forward motion. That can be a real asset for a team. All right, let's talk about the enthusiast.
And just one thing on 6s too, I have a couple great 6 friends, and when I think I have my final plan for something put together, I always run it by them one last time, because if there's something that could go wrong with it, they will find it. So very valuable.
My brother's a 6. My brother's a 6, and like every time he's like, "Hey, what's the plan for this?" and I give him a plan, and then after that conversation, I'm like, "This is not a plan. This is like at best a sketch." He just thinks of so many things that I just don't naturally think of. You know what I mean? So many kind of contingencies.
Which is why it's great, right? Like it's so good to have other types in your orbit, because we need that perspective. So I love that. I'll have to remember that about you, because I'll run stuff by him too.
But buckle up if you're running it by him, and get your pencil out for your the notes.
I will be fully ready. I will be fully ready. So the 7s, we got Jack Sparrow here. Their core desire is these are the rainbows and unicorns of life. They want to be happy. They don't just want, like, we all want to be happy, okay? But they demand to be happy, okay? It's an extreme drive to always be in that zone, the like looking ahead at all the great possibilities, happy zone. And their core fear is being pulled out of that zone. So to experience disappointment or emotional pain. And it's kind of like they don't want to be tethered to the earth by anything unpleasant. They want to be always eyes on the horizon, looking at the great possibilities. So that's kind of their motivation. They're going to be looking for others to support that for them, that they don't need to be anxious. Everything is going to go great. Everything, life is possibilities, and that's what their motivation is in life. Their weakness is it's called gluttony, but it's really they are going to go to every length to keep that happy, fulfilled vibe going, and so they're going to continuously seek out the experiences in life that bring them that happy. Everything is good, everything is possible, everything is exciting. You might have the race car drivers of the world in this category, because they like that, like adrenaline, that positive experience. And their personal, their speaking style, it's that storytelling. So that's the person where you start talking to them and they're like, can't you just see it? We're gonna do this, and then we're gonna do that. Like, they're great, telling you all about some fantastic business venture that, you're all going to go on, do together and succeed, or vacation that you're going to go on. And so on your team, that's great. Lots of dynamic energy, great delivering training, bringing the energy to the presentation, very quick thinking and resourceful because they want to keep themselves and everybody else in that positive forward movement zone. Their challenges, it can be a little hard for them to focus and follow through when the excitement and the vision isn't at its peak. So sometimes they're great at coming up with this great rainbows and unicorn plan, but then struggle to stay on task to get you there. They need the support of the 5s and 6s and 3s of the world to like get it across the finish line. And they can avoid, like I know Amy Barnard-Bond has a great article out there about how to deliver bad news. Well, that's a great article to share with your 7s because they really struggle with those, uncomfortable situations where they have to, say something that isn't happy to someone. Because they're all about the pursuit of pleasure. So you really want the action trip is to make sure that, they stay engaged and that they follow through with their behavior on their emotional, vision quest that they are naturally oriented to.
All right, let's dive into the challenger.
Right. The challenger. This is somebody who is the warrior. That's how I think of them. Their core motivation is to protect themselves, to protect the people that they love and care about. Their core fear is being powerless or feeling weak or manipulated. They are someone who is always striving for self-reliance, independence, but can also veer towards dominance and control. They have the core weakness here. The word is lust, but it's not specifically lust in a sexual meaning. It's an kind of a inclination towards intensity and being overly intense. Their communication style is most often a command. Life is a challenge, and I'm the challenger. I don't do subtle. In compliance, these people are action-oriented. They're really effective at enforcing policies. They're zealous advocates for justice. They're not afraid to challenge or to have difficult conversations, but they can be perceived as being aggressive. And they might struggle with being personally vulnerable, which can lead to questions about their authenticity. They also have a strong desire for control, and that can lead to micromanagement in some people. They have this, powerful drive for justice, which can make them great enforcers, but they can also become punitive and or try and rule through fear and create a fear-based culture, which is not healthy. So their action tip is to learn to temper their assertiveness with empathy and identify more with having more of an empathetic approach and being more vulnerable with people so they can build trust. That is the 8.
But if your steak is not cooked right and you got an 8 at the table, they are happy to tell the waiter to get that cooked and redo the steak. Okay.
They are sending it back. Yeah,
exactly.
Lot of
they love it. They don't even need dessert if they get a chance to complain about something. Okay. Type 9 peacemaker, Harry Bla'ipa'a. All right. So they are looking for inner stability and peace of mind. And their fear is all about being in conflict or losing the connection with others. So these are very agreeable, reassuring, outwardly focused people who are really motivated by building harmony, avoiding conflicts, and preserving things the way they are. So these are not people that typically love a bunch of change. They like a status quo. They like the peace and harmony that comes from what they know. So their core weakness as it relates to, these 9 deadly sins is sloth. So falling asleep to their desires or passions in order to maintain peace. So you'll hear them say something like, in seeking truth, you have to get both sides of the story. So these people are very good at being that bridge builder, being that peacemaker, seeing things from another side than, just their own sort of myopic side. Okay. So their strengths, again, great mediators. Peacemakers are a very calm presence. and they're really good at building consensus. They're outward focused gut types, and they're good at making sure that policies are perceived as fair. But they might struggle with their own opinion. They might struggle expressing their own opinion or their own desires, and not putting, just like a 2, sometimes 9s are so disconnected with themselves because they're so focused on those around them that they lose sight of what their own goals and desires are. So they can lose touch with some of those priorities by merging themselves to too great of a degree with other people's agendas. So the action tip for a 9, if you're a 9, learn to embrace healthy conflict. Understand that there's different types of conflict, whether it's task conflict or personal conflict, and those are not all the same. And sometimes a task conflict is a very healthy thing in pursuit of a goal or of a change. And also try to get better at asserting your own voice and prioritizing those hard truths. Okay, we're going to run now through a couple of examples, and you have to guess in the chat. We want to see a bunch of participation in the chat as you guess these types. Okay, here's the first one.
You want answers? I think I'm entitled. You want answers? I want the truth! You can't handle the truth! Son, we live in a world that has walls, and those walls have to be guarded by men with guns. Who's gonna do it? You? You, Lieutenant Weinberg? I have a greater responsibility than you can possibly fathom. You weep for Santiago and you curse the Marines. You have that luxury. You have the luxury of not knowing what I know, that Santiago's death, while tragic, probably saved lives. And my existence, while grotesque and incomprehensible to you, saves lives.
Let's jump to the next one here, okay? Good job. Keep these, you got to come quick here, all right?
Was up.
What happened?
Was up late last night figuring out a new plan. Here it is. Joy. Yes, Joy. You'll be in charge of the console, keeping Riley happy all day long. And may I add, I love your dress. It's adorable. Oh, this whole thing? Thank you so much. I love the way it twirls. Sadness. I have a super important job just for you. Really? Mm-hmm. Follow me. Your job is to make sure that all the sadness stays inside of it.
So, you want me to just stand here?
Hey, it's not my place to tell you how to do your job. You're a pro at this. Isn't this fun?
No.
Atta girl. All right, everyone, fresh start. We are going to have a good day, which will turn into a good week, which will turn into a good year, which turns into a good
All right, very
month.
good. So I saw some 7s in there. Joy from Inside Out is your quintessential 7. She just wants good feelings only. She wants to, paint a circle on the floor to put all the sadness inside. All right, here's our last little quiz here. You guys are, some of you are doing really great here. All right, last one.
I'm no executioner.
Your compassion is a weakness your enemies will not share.
That's why it's so important. It separates us from them.
You want to fight criminals. This man is a murderer.
This man should be tried.
By whom? Corrupt bureaucrats? Criminals mock society's laws. You know this better than most.
You cannot lead this man unless you are prepared to do what is necessary to defeat evil.
Where would I be leading these men?
Gotham. As Gotham's favored son, you will be ideally placed to strike at the heart of criminality.
Very good. I saw some 1s in there. Batman is absolutely a 1. And so that's just a fun little way to kind of start testing your knowledge of this, seeing if you can start to see it. And I'm telling you, as you start to learn this framework, you're going to start to see the types all around you. And you can start to test out as you understand what those core desires are or what those core fears are. You can kind of start to see that root in whatever fruit you're hearing them talk about, or how they talk about things, or when they talk about what they're worried about. You can start to trace that down to what they matter most, or to what matters most to them. Okay, so you now understand the framework. You understand what the Enneagram is. You understand what these different types are and how they show up in an ethics and compliance role. Now we're going to come into some Enneagram informed strategies. So if you have to go, no worries. Just understand that the replay is going to be available and these slides are going to be sent around to everybody who is a subscriber. All right, Mel, why don't you walk us through this enhancing self-awareness, this strategy 1?
Okay, so I mean, I really think we've been talking about this along the way as we've gone along. This is really a great tool for enhancing your self-awareness. So, when you read the descriptions, you go online or pick up a book about the Enneagram and really dig into the description about the type that you think you are, and really get to know all of those default settings. Because I think what we tend to do is lean into the positive stuff and, be in a little bit of denial about some of the characteristics of our type that might be vulnerabilities or weaknesses in some situations. So you really want to learn your default settings, move from being kind of reactive to just knowing like, oh, when I'm under stress, I tend to do this, and I'm in a really stressful period right now, so I'm going to be on the lookout for these behaviors that are not so healthy. So like for me, when I'm the 3 and I might be disintegrating a little towards the 9 under stress, and I find that I'm not getting things done and I'm disengaging and I'm not moving forward, take some time for yourself. Learn to give yourself some grace and some self-care because you recognize those signs of stress. Lean into your strengths, for those 1s, lean into that integrity. It's great. It's a superpower for you. For 5s, lean into that analytical strength that you have. If someone needs a deep dive, you are there for that, and lean into that strength. And as a 3, if you need something done, you give it to a 3 and we will get that done for you. And so lean into that strength that you have, and then don't forget about your blind spots. We 3s, we need to get back in touch with our own feelings, and sometimes tap the brakes and feel in the moment, have a little more empathy. If you're a 5, sometimes you need to get unstuck by the details and not let perfect be the enemy of good enough. If there's time pressure going on, we all have to think about how we can use our self-knowledge that we gain through the Enneagram to kind of move through life in a healthier, more productive way.
All right, Gwen, walk us through strategy number 2, improving team dynamics and collaboration.
Yeah. In no way am I suggesting that you should, stereotype people on your team and decide that, only 5s are going to do research from now on. But you can start looking at how you're going to communicate with your team. If you, suspect that you have somebody on your team who might be a 7, then emphasizing the positive and talking about exciting opportunities and is going to resonate with them in a far better way than it might otherwise. If you have 6s on your team, being very clear, talking about potential risks, being transparent and honest, providing reassurance, coming up with a plan to deal with the unexpected will help them feel like they can most buy into the program that you're proposing. Build trust with people, and that will vary depending on who they are, right? So a type 8, if you betray them, you are lost to them forever. They will write you off for the rest of time. So be very careful about, the trust that you develop with people and what that looks like. For a 2, taking them for granted is the kiss of death to that relationship. A simple thank you so much, or I see you, or I recognize your efforts, or I really appreciate you will go far, very, very far with a 2. So understanding the different types and what they need can help you create better dynamics for your team overall. And of course, navigating conflict is very different for different people. A 9, challenging in a respectful way, gently but firmly, when they are avoiding conflict. Try and push them a bit to acknowledge and accept that conflict's part of the job. And 8, make sure that you're constructively helping them to channel that assertiveness. So learning about the Enneagram can help you pull out the best characteristics of those that are on your team.
Yeah. And, again, what I love about this whole framework is it gives you a really clear picture, not just of those kind of core desires and like fears that really are the fuel behind the actions that we see displayed around us. But we can see that each type has some things that they're really, really good at and some things that they really struggle with, right? And understanding those things, or just kind of having those things, and this is coming from a 3, so please understand I mean this. Like having those things on the table laid bare can do a lot in a collaborative environment or in a team dynamic to really get the most synergy possible just by leaning into those strengths and really trying to avoid those weaknesses. So let's talk about optimizing core functions. So we talked about some kind of high level applications of this. Let's talk about this specifically for policy development. So start to kind of think about what different types might need, right? Your organization, the stakeholders that you're trying to influence are a bunch of these different types. And if we think everyone is like us, we're a 1, let's say, we think everyone's a 1 and we're writing a policy for a bunch of 1s, we're going to lose out. We're not going to resonate with a large portion of the organization. So 1s are great because they develop really clear and correct procedures. They don't cut corners on stuff like that. 5s are great because they can really make sure that the logical application or the logical information is presented in a comprehensive way. That again, the analysis has really been bottomed out. 9s, they love policies that promote harmony and avoid conflict. So again, when you're rolling something new out, if you can start to layer in your messaging, a couple of different, resonant statements that are going to likely resonate with those who prioritize harmony, those who prioritize success, those who prioritize stability or security. If we can interweave those different flavor profiles, the odds of us resonating with a diverse audience is going to be exponentially higher. So if you can draft policies using simple, straightforward forward language and avoiding that technical jargon, well, again, trying to resonate with more people, your policy development is going to ultimately be a lot more effective, right? It's going to give the information that's necessary. It's not going to be 20 pages when it can be 5. We're not going to cut quarters on it. The right information is going to be contained in it. And again, if we can think about this from an accessibility perspective, that like the diversity is not just from, diversity in general, encapsulates different personality types, different viewpoints. And so when we can think about our policies as a, something that we are delivering to the organization as a form of service, and we can think about it from an accessibility perspective, then I think we can drive a lot more effectiveness. The time that we're spending on that policy development can be a lot stronger. Mel, talk to us about compliance training.
Okay, sure. And I also wanted to note, I think I saw a question going through the chat about how you handle a manager or supervisor who's a certain type. I just wanted to throw out there that it's a really good idea to have an idea of what type your boss is, because you should always take that into account in your communications and the products you deliver to them. So, I've had a lot of 8 and 3 bosses. And so I made sure that I started off with the bottom line first and then presented any inductive reasoning, backup material as an appendix, that kind of thing. Or if you have a 5 as a boss, it's probably the flip side. They probably want to know exactly, all the research you went through to get to what you're recommending to them. But I think it's a great idea to adapt your style if it's different. You're not, adapt your point of view to their type when you're working with your boss. It's good. It's a good way to succeed in your role. So training, I think one of the best things you can do with the Enneagram with training is to just make sure your training includes statements and approaches that will appeal to all the different types, because I'm sure your organization has all the different types. So, when you're talking about, why something is important, it's important because it's the right thing to do is going to speak to the 1. It's important because it will help the organization achieve its strategic objectives, might be really appealing to the 3. Or if it's, saying in your training to your the team you're educating, we really need your help to get this done, that's going to appeal to the 2s that are in your audience. So just kind of thinking about, do you have statements in your training that really will grab the attention of all the different types and make them feel seen and understood in the way that you're explaining things. If you do have a micro learning, understand that there might be a 5 out there left unsatisfied by that. So maybe the micro learning includes for more information, you can go here and go look at all the details so that, you're satisfying the folks out there that, that's what they really need. So I kind of think when it comes to training, it's just remembering all the types other than your own that are out there and trying to make sure that you include them in your communication style so that you can really appeal to your broad audience.
I mean, look, compliance is a people business. The name of the game is influence. You can't influence something that you don't understand. And this is just yet another framework that we can start to internalize to gain a better understanding of the people that we're trying to influence and really increase the odds that the efforts that we're putting forth are going to resonate and are going to actually change the behaviors inside of our organization. All right, so let's talk about investigations. Compliance investigations, of course, they need to be consistent, they need to be objective, and they need to be thorough. So we need to think about what gaps or what strengths we might have on our investigation team and really try to lean into those things. So we want our interviews, again, we want our investigations to be consistent, but we want our interview techniques to have some flexibility for different personality types or different situations we might be encountering. So adapting these interview types to the subject that we're talking to can do a lot. So if you notice that you're talking to a type 8 or you think somebody is kind of a type 8 and you've tuned into that, then you should lean into directness. Even if you're a 9, even if you're a 2 who might sort of naturally struggle with that. That might not be your natural way to communicate. If you feel you're talking to somebody that's emotional, they might be a 4, okay? And so those people, they're going to need to have a little bit more room to breathe, to spend time on the sort of emotional aspects of the investigation, where you might be a 3 where you just kind of plow over that, or you might be an 8 where you just are not that in touch with those, all those feelings, all those internal feelings that in your experience don't serve you well or can't be relied upon. So again, we want to maintain that consistency and that objectivity. When it comes down to doing an aggregation of a bunch of investigations, or you want to follow up on a root cause analysis, and you have a 5 on your team, I would much rather give that on average to a 5, somebody who really is going to nerd out on all those details and is really likely to bottom that out, as opposed to, let's say, a 7 who's really enthusiastic but might be a little bit more distractible and might not be as good with details. So again, part of this is us just kind of taking our glasses off, cleaning those lenses, and being able to see more clearly the people that we're coming in contact with, the people that are in our orbit, so that we can be better allocate the resources that are entrusted to us to drive the right outcomes forward. All right, Gwen, over to you now on risk and engagement.
Now, risk management, as we've talked about, is if you've got a 6 on your team, you're golden from a risk standpoint. They are great at looking around the corner, at potentially seeing traps and issues that other people are blind to. They can be fantastic with that. Then if you have an 8 on your team, you can empower them to take decisive action about the risks that you've identified. And then, bring in a 5 to talk about kind of the data analysis and the deep dive into the background that supports the informed assessment of that risk. So the idea is to get a broad set of people involved in your risk assessment processes, because they each will bring an important skill to the risk assessment. If I could only choose one person, if I have a tiny team, I'm choosing a 6. But you can enhance that 6's skills with others. And then in terms of shareholder,
6s are rarely a bad bet. You know what I mean? 6s are usually pretty good.
So when you're sharing the results of your risk assessment with your management team or your board or your leadership, they're going to react differently to the information and engage with it for different reasons, right? So the type 2 might want appreciation for, I see how much you reduced this risk compared to last year. Great job on that. We see you. Here's some things we could work on this year. Type 3, again, is also going to want some kind of recognition of how far they've come or what they can work on now. 9's looking for harmony. 9 wants to know that it's balanced, that everyone is doing a team job, that you're coming to a result that is going to create a lower risk profile for the whole company. So identify the key stakeholders that you have in your organization and see if you can make an educated guess at their Enneagram type, so you can tailor your delivery and your engagement with them differently. Having workshops or discussions or a feedback loop to kind of build that trust and foster collaboration in a style that resonates with them.
All right. So investigations are important. Policy building is important. Training, of course, is important. Finding risks in our organization, engaging stakeholders. All that is really in pursuit of what? It's in pursuit of building a sustainable culture of integrity that really self-corrects and that, can drive the impact forward. So talk to us about this fourth strategy, Mel.
Well, I mean, I think once again, always important is just that self-awareness, making sure that you understand how your own type is influencing your ethical decision-making so you can avoid pitfalls and blind spots, and leverage the other types on your team to help foster, awareness and courage and reasoning. So, I don't know, I'm picturing the Wizard of Oz for some reason right now, where you've got the courage and the heart, and so like the 4 may be your, emotional depth, and the 8 may be the courage, and so just think about how you can leverage all the different strengths and work together to create that culture. You want to avoid dilemmas. If you have a 9 as a CEO, for instance, they can be or any divisional or C-suite leader that's a 9, really conflict avoidant, really can get lost in seeing all the different points of view sometimes. So you may need to take that into consideration, for instance, if you're addressing an ethical problem, so that you can make sure you help them push past conflict avoidance and analysis paralysis to make sure that the ethical issue gets addressed. So it's kind of taking into account the types that you have on your team that you're working with in an investigation or in addressing an ethical dilemma, to make sure that you move things towards an ethical resolution and action that's needed around that. And promoting integrity, as a 3, we do really have this fear of not being seen as getting the thing done, right? Which could lead you to compromising or cutting corners to just make sure you get something across the finish line. So making sure, whether that's you or that's an executive on your team, that you're aware of that, and you can help reinforce with them to get them past their blind spots or your blind spots, to make sure that you stay on the path to integrity, and foster that culture, whether it's because it's doing the right thing, or it's helping the people in the organization, or it's achieving the objective, or it's that you're doing the right thing for everyone involved, that you're kind of painting that picture in colors that all of the types see to create that culture at the end of the day.
All right. So this is hopefully just the start of your Enneagram journey. We're getting to the end here. Appreciate all of you who have stuck around. So this is really, we said it from the start, and I think you can kind of start to see now what a powerful tool this Enneagram is in understanding yourself and better understanding your team. Our job is to drive effectiveness. We need to be effective in our job. We need to drive the impact forward that our business needs. And again, like I'm saying every single week on the show, this is a people business at the end of the day. And you are your organization's behavioral scientist, okay? So it's on us to better understand who these folks are that we're trying to influence. So I love the Enneagram because I think it is it started me on a journey that I don't feel like I'm near completion of, but it's one that I continue to learn more and more about as my lens becomes more attuned to those around me. And I can more easily now than when I first, started to learn about this, I can more easily see what those core desires and fears are in the people around me. And it helps me to show up and give them what they need. So just kind of opening our eyes, illuminating these core fears and desires is a big one. And again, it can then help me to optimize our processes, improve the dynamics of our group, and stop showing up in ways that are not really conducive to the collaboration necessary in a complex business or in the knowledge work economy that we're all a part of.
Hey, Nick, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
I have to jump myself. Thank you very much, everyone. Nice to see you.
Round of applause for Gwen. Gwen, you're amazing.
Bye.
Thank you so much. This was absolutely phenomenal. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
See ya. So when we can get out of the ivory tower, when we can get out of the books and the pages and the protocols that we're putting down on paper, and kind of pick our eyes up and focus on the human-centric nature of this, of this role that we have, I think it then kind of reinforces the necessity for us to get better at this kind of stuff, to understand that and really start to empower the people on our team. Again, I'm just sharing from my own life, but as I've started to be able to recognize different types in folks, and as I've been able to validate the kind of core fears or drivers that are the sort of source of the fuel for the actions that folks take, I can really utilize these guys better. I can give them things that are really going to feed them, that are to what Mel was saying earlier, that are many times kind of complements to gaps I have in myself. So empowering that individuality really creates the circumstance for success. So Mel, you want to walk us through kind of next steps here?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we've hit on it really. Yeah, take some time, explore the Enneagram, read, get comfortable with your own type, and give yourself some grace. There's no good and bad to any type. There's just, strengths and areas for opportunity. So, really, dig into that. Practice observing, like those clips that Nick showed. You could play that game watching a movie, watching TV in the evening, trying to figure out what types different characters are, or reality shows coming up, and practicing your observation skills. It's a really great way to just, I think, open up your curiosity. I think it's really an invitation to be curious about what makes people tick and how other people may tick in a way that's entirely different from you. And what a beautiful thing that is, because what a boring world this would be if we were all the same type. So use the Enneagram as an invitation to go out there, be curious about yourself, about others, and to use it as a tool when you're designing a program or a communication, to make sure that you're thinking about all the different ways in which you might want to communicate with and appeal to all the different beautiful types that are out there. And again, for those very same reasons, it's dynamic, it's not a label, it's not a stereotype, it's not used to put someone down or put someone up on a pedestal, it's just used to maybe communicate more effectively with one another.
So if you like this content, guys, we have a whole nother presentation that dives way deeper into kind of, this is kind of a 101 course. We have like a 201 course. So if you're interested in that, drop some ones in the chat and we will get that scheduled. But I really love the Enneagram. It's changed my life in a lot of different ways. Mel, thank you so much for coming. Let's get a massive round of applause for Mel. Hope you guys really liked this presentation, something a little bit different. We'll be sending around the slides, and the slides have a whole bunch of resources in the back, a bunch of cool graphics, so you can use this as a resource. And if you're look at all those ones, looks like we're gonna have to do our 201 course on this, Mel. For those of you still here, we got 2 great episodes next week. We have one on Tuesday with the one and only Ross Ronan. We're going to be talking healthcare compliance. We're going to be talking about corporate integrity agreements as strategic advantages. If you don't know Ross Ronan, I would encourage you to follow him. He's extremely smart, always has some great perspective to bring. And then next Thursday, we have the one and only Matt Kelly coming back on to talk about carrots and sticks, how to figure out incentives for better compliance. So thank you all for those of you who stayed. Mel, you are the best. Awesome. We were able to get this done.
We'll see you soon. Everybody.
Love you all. Bye-bye.